Hey everybody, welcome back to Voices of the LCMS, where we are diving into real data from the State of the LCMS survey to ask hard questions and to look for better ways to walk together. Also, if you missed it, I just released all of the data directly to your inbox. You can go to www.lcmsdata.com and you can grab it for free there. That's lcmsdata.com. So in our first few episodes, we've talked about youth and young adults, the pastoral pipeline, SMP and residential, and the possibility of an online MDiv. But today I want to turn to a finding that it didn't surprise me based on what I've anecdotally experienced, but the data backs it up with a couple of exclamation points. And honestly, it's concerning. And here it is. Less than 20% of leaders in the LCMS believe our current structure allows for the voices of our larger and growing churches to be heard. 24% are unsure and more than 56% flat out said no. So let me say that again. Fewer than 1 in 5 believe our structure gives larger and growing churches a seat at the table. Now, why does this matter? Because many of these congregations are some of the places in our synod that are actually seeing positive growth in attendance and baptisms and outreach. And they're innovating, many of them, with digital ministry and developing new leadership pipelines and finding ways to engage with youth and young adults. And yet, according to the survey, their leaders feel sidelined, frustrated, and some of them even silenced with our current synodical operation. And it's not just about being unheard. Many pastors of these larger churches have told me the deeper problem is then being untrusted. That instead of posture of trust and learning, they feel like they're being hunted, where people are looking to catch them doing something wrong, and anonymous accusations pop up online, and internet warriors throw charges from the shadows. And if you need more evidence of this, check out the Red Letter Disciple podcast released earlier this week with 3 pastors of larger churches sharing their stories. So friends, it's hard to innovate or even share what's working when you feel like someone's waiting to pounce. Like that posture doesn't just silence, it isolates people, and it creates suspicion instead of collaboration. Former LCMS President Jerry Kieschnick said on my podcast a couple of weeks ago something that stuck with me. He told me, Zach, you know who pays for the national conventions of our church body? The individual congregations. They're billed by their districts based on the number of communicant members. So if I were a large church pastor today, he said, I would say to my district president, can you help me understand, sir, why our congregation is paying on the basis of 800 members, yet those 800 people have 0 representation at our national convention? In the language of the land, that's taxation without representation. And something's got to give, he said. So that's a powerful picture of the frustration, right? Larger churches are expected to contribute significantly, especially financially, but many of these pastors then are not elected to represent their circuits, and the voices of the people they serve are often absent from the table where decisions are being made. And so this is the great tension. We say collectively that we want to reach the next generation. We want to be more missional, but are we listening to the churches that are doing it? And beyond that, are we treating them with trust rather than suspicion? Now, some of you might say, well, Zach, larger churches already have influence, bigger budgets, bigger staffs, bigger platforms. And in some ways, that's true. But grassroots influence doesn't automatically translate into voice or even trust in our structure. You see, the way our system is set up, I'm sure many of you know, is that representation is often one congregation, one vote. That means a church of 20, a church of 200, and a church of 2,000 both have the same say in decision making. And there's something fair about that, but there's also a risk in that. When the vast majority of larger and growing churches are saying they're not being heard, they're not trusted, and when on top of that, they're the most significant financial contributors, and they're having to waste precious hours fending off naysayers, throwing charges at them, something is off, very, very off. So let me be clear. This isn't about big church versus small church. Small and rural churches are the backbone of the LCMS. Medium-sized churches often carry a huge amount of faithfulness and stability. And I believe the body of Christ, our synod specifically, needs every size and every part. But what if the wisdom and experiences of our larger churches, especially those growing in a time of decline, could help the whole synod? What if instead of suspicion, they were invited to the table to teach and share like what's working and what's not working in your area? Because here's the reality. If we ignore or mistrust our growing larger churches, we risk ignoring some of the very insights God may be giving to us to grow in the future. And so let me leave you with a few questions today. What would it look like for the LCMS to really listen and trust its largest and fastest growing congregations? How can we create spaces for their voices without at the same time diminishing the voices of smaller congregations? And how might our synod be stronger if every church, small, medium, or large, felt their perspective was valued and their motives were not under suspicion? The data is very, very clear. Fewer than 20% believe that's happening now. And that's a challenge we can't afford to ignore or push away. So as always, friends, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you serve in a larger church? Do you serve in a smaller one? Do you feel like your voice is being represented in the LCMS? And how can we do this better? Thanks for watching. By the way, more than 70% of you watching are not subscribed. And so, hey, if you find these conversations helpful, will you do me a favor and spend the 3 seconds it takes to hit that subscribe button and maybe share this video and comment so hopefully I can do even more of these in the future, prayerfully and hopefully to help our synod walk together better in the future. So we'll see you back next week for the new Voices of the LCMS video.